Well, as was said on Thursday, some long while ago, there were several Sufi stories told that introduced us to a sublime paradox. And since that time, we've traveled very far. So we're arrived at that place where it's time to recognize whether indeed we've solved this paradox, realizing that we can only do so if we've experienced and brought together in ourselves stillness and movement. The first story is about a great Sufi sheikh who went on a pilgrimage with a group of his followers, and they came to a town and found themselves in the midst of the marketplace. And just at a point when they arrived there, a young man jumped out in front of the great Sufi sheikh and began to denigrate the ways of the Sufis, being quite rude about the way he said that Sufi is just a belief system and another sect and so forth and so on. And the great Sufi sheikh listened to him very carefully, and after he'd finished his tirade, the Sufi sheikh took from his finger a ring in which there was a rather large stone. And he said to the young man, do you see those stallholders over there? Would you take this ring to them and ask them how much they would give you for it? So the young man went off with the ring, and when he came back, the Sufi sheikh asked him, he said, well, the stallholders said they would only offer me a few pennies for it. Oh, said the sheikh, well, you know, around the corner from here, there's a jewelry store. Would you take this ring to the jeweler there, who has been there for some many years, and ask him its value? So after some while, the young man came back with the ring, and the Sufi sheikh asked him, well, what did the jeweler say? And the young man said, well, to his very great surprise, when the jeweler saw the ring, he said, even if I sold my shop and all the stock that's in it, I would not have the value of this gem. Ah, said the Sufi sheikh, you see, if you want to know the value of a gem, you have to seek a jeweler. And so it is, if you want to know the worth of a Sufi, then become a Sufi. And the second story is also about another great Sufi sheikh on pilgrimage with a group of his followers. And they came to the gates of the great city of Bukhara. But as is usual, and at those locations, there were a number of stallholders outside selling sweetmeats and the like. And as the sheikh and his entourage approached the gates of the city, the great sheikh looked over at a stall that was selling kebabs, meatballs, and he said to his followers, I just feel like eating a kebab. Well, his followers were very surprised because their master did not eat meat. But the great sheikh walked over to the stall and purchased a kebab stick. And when he bit into the very first meatball, the stallholder who sold him the kebab fell down in a swoon. The great sheikh bent down and gently lifted the stallholder to his feet when he'd come out of his faint, and led him over to his group of followers. And he said to all his followers, "Let me introduce you to my successor." So the first story implies that there is a becoming. And the second story implies that we've already arrived. This is a paradox for us. How have you solved this paradox? Remembering that we can only do so when we've already experienced and brought within ourselves stillness, presence, attention, alertness, awareness, and the movement of life with all its experiences, all its realities, ever changing. How have you reconciled this paradox of becoming and arriving? Unless we can do so, we'll always be on the treadmill of life, always a seeker. But where do they meet? The recognition of having arrived and the becoming. How have you solved this? Time and timelessness, stillness and moveness, emptiness and fullness, arriving and becoming. Where is their meeting place in us? How do we live with these seemingly opposites, the paradoxes? Where do they meet? How are they reconciled? Thank you.